Welcome back to our channel, dear friends. Today's story is truly unforgettable. Imagine giving your beloved daughter a luxurious villa as a wedding gift, only to watch helplessly as her greedy in-laws invade and attempt to take over her dream home. But what happened next was utterly jaw-dropping. A single powerful sentence sent those entitled in-laws running for the hills. To discover exactly what was said and how dramatically this all unfolded, make sure you stay with me to the very end. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to support our channel and keep up with even more incredible stories like this one. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below letting me know where you're tuning in from and how you'd handle a similar situation. Now, let's dive right in. I never expected I'd see my daughter's father slam a grown man into the wall on the very day we gifted her a magnificent sun-drenched villa. But that's exactly how the storm began. A shocking split-second moment that tore through our once peaceful lives and revealed just how greedy some people can be when they smell money. My name is Sandra Merritt, and my husband Richard and I have always believed in providing for our only child, Nicole. She's our pride, our heartbeat, and the best parts of me and Richard rolled into one remarkable young woman. From her earliest days playing with model houses and plastic teacups, she dreamed big, forging an impressive career, owning her own home, and building a loving family. We did our best to nurture her ambitions. We made sure she got into a great university. We introduced her to the right circles, and we always let her know we were in her corner, no matter what. Over the years, Nicole's growth astounded us. She became a poised and hardworking professional, landing a solid position at Highland and Company in Boston. She conquered each promotion with a mix of self-confidence and humility, the kind of blend that draws respect from friends and colleagues alike. Watching her become this strong, caring person who wanted to share her success with others filled me with a glowing sense of pride. So, when she first introduced us to Zach White, her then boyfriend, Richard and I felt a mixture of caution and hope. Zach showed up with a polite handshake and a mild manner that suggested he might be a respectful partner for Nicole. But it was his quietness that stuck with me. Not the comfortable silence of a thoughtful man, but a sort of uneasy hush, as though he was waiting for an invisible prompt. Still, Nicole seemed happy, so we put our doubts aside and tried to welcome him with open arms. But from the beginning, there were warning signs, especially regarding his family. The Whites, Zach's parents, Mr. and Mrs. White, and his older brother Ryan, with his wife Emily, had little in the way of stability. They owned no real property, had no significant savings, and, from what I could gather, barely scraped by. Ryan worked odd jobs, while Emily hopped between part-time gigs. The parents occasionally labored as farmhands outside the city. I never wanted to judge someone based solely on finances. After all, Richard and I weren't always so fortunate. We understood humble beginnings all too well. But everything about the White family's behavior gave off a strange vibe. They seemed uncomfortably comfortable mooching from anyone who would let them. Nicole, in love and stubborn as she could be, saw only the best in Zach. She'd wave off any negative remarks as misunderstanding. "Mom," she used to say, "Zach's parents might not be well off, but they raised a good man." And I remember thinking, was that truly the case? Or was she falling victim to her own optimism? When the relationship escalated to talk of marriage, Richard and I hesitated, but Nicole insisted they were prepared to build a life together. With a knot in my stomach, I said yes. I wanted to trust her judgment. Parents dream of seeing their child in a healthy marriage, so we did what we could to pave the way for Nicole's happiness. By then, Nicole had endured her fair share of financial burdens on Zach's behalf. She'd quietly helped him pay off small debts, covered their date nights more often than not, and even purchased an engagement ring for herself when he claimed his finances were in crisis. We found out the truth later. She didn't want us to worry, so she'd faked a story about how he saved up to surprise her. That level of self sacrifice made me uneasy. Still, we thought, if it's what Nicole wants, we'll stand behind her. To ensure our daughter's future, we decided to gift her a stunning villa in the suburbs, a gesture to support them as they started married life. It wasn't something to brag about. It was simply our attempt to give Nicole and Zach a solid footing. Richard poured his heart and a great deal of money into customizing the place with top-grade materials, modern architecture, and tasteful furnishings. Once renovations finished, we planned to celebrate together before handing Nicole the keys. That day should have been filled with pride and excitement. Instead, the moment we stepped into the foyer, we heard the echoes of an argument that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. A woman's voice, thick with disdain, barked out complaints about the neighborhood gates, the so-called unfriendly vibe of the suburban community, and the layout of the house itself. Our newly renovated home, mind you. Recognizing the voice as Mrs. White's, I felt my blood pressure spike. Her criticisms continued. Is this entire block a prison? Who puts up such a sturdy front gate, as if we're guarding a bank? She acted like she owned the place. Nicole tried to offer an olive branch. Mrs. White, there's a community center close by where you can meet neighbors, attend social events. But her words were brushed aside with a mocking sniff. Then Mr. White emerged and dropped a bombshell with the casual arrogance of a man who'd found a golden lottery ticket. He'd decided right then and there that the master bedroom would be his and Mrs. White's, before Nicole even stepped foot in it as the rightful homeowner. As if that weren't enough, he mumbled a plan about moving Ryan and Emily in too, along with their little boy, Oliver. Suddenly, it wasn't a home for my daughter and her future husband. No, it was the White family's new fortress, an all expenses paid multi-generational nest. Quick pause. If you're reading this right now, I'm curious. Where are you tuning in from? Comment 1 if you're enjoying the story so far, or comment 2 if you think there's more drama to uncover. Your feedback means a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Nicole stared at Zach, expecting him to intervene. To her horror, he just lowered his eyes, scuffed the pristine hardwood floors with his shoe, and said nothing. My daughter had tears brimming in her eyes, fury swirling in them, as she told them they had absolutely no right to impose like that. But the Whites acted like she was the intruder. They twisted it all around, accusing Nicole of being ungrateful to a future father-in-law. Mrs. White even insisted that Nicole take care of the family, cooking and cleaning like a domestic servant. The longer I listened, the clearer it became. In their view, Nicole was a resource, not a partner. Our wedding gift villa was just a windfall they intended to seize without shame. When Nicole turned to Zach for backup, that boy couldn't muster more than a weak murmur about respecting his parents. That was the final straw. Richard, who's typically calm, snapped. He sent a furious glare at Zach and his parents, fists clenched. Then, in one terrifying moment, Mr. White made a remark about Nicole's spoiled, city-bred attitude, implying she wasn't good enough for Zach. Richard swung, one punch to Mr. White's jaw. The man toppled backward, hitting the wall with a thud that silenced the room. No one moved. No one breathed. What had started as a day of celebration turned into a near brawl. The Whites, stunned, scrambled for the door, still spewing threats and insults on their way out. Nicole stood there, trembling. I took her hand, my own heart hammering, and realized the illusions she had about Zach and his family had finally shattered. In the aftermath of that fiasco, our home, which was supposed to be a symbol of Nicole's new life, fell silent and cold. You'd think the Whites would stay away after facing Richard's wrath, but no. Within a week, they regrouped and tried subtler tactics. It started with phone calls. Mrs. White's voice, saccharine and insincere, cooed through the speaker. We only want what's best for Zach and for Nicole. she'd say. Can't we patch things up? Family squabbles happen all the time. Nicole made the mistake of meeting Zach for coffee to hear him out. He mumbled apologies on behalf of his parents, but never condemned their behavior. He seemed more worried about making peace than acknowledging the brazen entitlement they'd shown. Nicole came home that night, eyes red from either tears or exhaustion. It was obvious that Zach's inability to stand up to his family was eroding any lingering hope she had for their relationship. Not long after, Zach's father made a surprise appearance at Nicole's workplace, Highland and Co. The receptionist called Nicole in a panic, saying a man was at the front desk, complaining loudly that his future daughter-in-law was refusing him something, money, a conversation, who knew what. Nicole was so mortified she had to slip out the side door to avoid a scene. Mr. White left only after security threatened to escort him out. When she told us about this, Richard's jaw tightened and his fists clenched as though he was ready for round two, but Nicole insisted she'd handle it. I'm not some high schooler who can't deal with conflict, she said. I'm an adult now. I'll straighten this out. Her plan? She decided to end things with Zach for good. No more engagement talk, no more illusions. And we agreed, if the relationship was beyond saving, it was better to cut ties cleanly than to let them fray indefinitely. Nicole called him up that evening and laid it out. Zach, this isn't working. Your parents disrespect me, and you stand by them. I refuse to marry into a family that doesn't even see me as a person. Zach blustered, tried to guilt trip her by saying she was throwing away their love, but Nicole stayed firm. I can't throw away something that was never real, she replied, voice shaking but resolute. She told him to collect his belongings from her apartment and never contact her again unless it was strictly necessary. After that conversation, we thought the storm had finally passed. How naive we were. The Whites, furious that they'd lost their golden ticket, launched an even more outrageous campaign. Zach demanded Nicole pay him back for every little thing he'd ever spent on her. Coffee, cheap dinners, even gas for rides that she mostly drove him to. He itemized it all in a spreadsheet, down to the cent, and emailed it to her, claiming she owed nearly $3,000. The nerve! He conveniently forgot that Nicole had paid for far more expensive things: his phone, some of his bills when he was unemployed, his father's hospital expenses. The hypocrisy was stunning. Nicole was initially too shocked to respond, but once her fury kicked in, she paid the sum, in full, plus a bit extra, then attached a similar breakdown of everything she had ever spent on him, which far exceeded his petty invoice. She made it clear, I'm settling my side to avoid any contact. Now, if you're so eager to balance accounts, you owe me more than you claim I owe you. Don't bother paying me back, but keep quiet or face legal consequences for harassment. She forwarded a copy of this exchange to her legal consultant at Highland and Co. as a precaution. It was as if she was telling him, you want to play nasty? Fine, but you can't win. That put an end to the invoice farce, though it also inflamed the Whites' resentment. Hey, friends, a quick check-in. If you feel Nicole made the right move settling that invoice outright, comment 1 to show your support for her decisive action. If you think she should have ignored it and let Zach flail, comment 2. I'm curious about your take. We braced for more drama, and it arrived in the ugliest form: public humiliation. One morning, Nicole walked into work to find a small crowd whispering near the lobby. There stood Zach, flanked by his outraged parents, waving a giant poster board with a list of debts Nicole supposedly owed him. They were calling her a fraud, a gold digger, and worse. People stared, flabbergasted by the pettiness of it all. Highland and Company Security asked them to leave. Instead of going quietly, Mrs. White began shouting about how Nicole had used Zach for money, for status, accusations so ridiculous that onlookers started snickering. Watching them melt down only illustrated how desperate and unhinged they'd become. Seeing Nicole walk in, Mrs. White lunged in her direction as if aiming to slap her. I was right behind Nicole, and I instantly stepped between them, glaring coldly. Mrs. White froze mid-swing, flustered by the memory of Richard's fist connecting with Mr. White's jaw not too long ago. Maybe she finally understood we weren't pushovers. Security then escorted the Whites out before they could cause any more spectacle. Yet, each run-in with them left Nicole emotionally drained. She tried to put up a brave front, diving into work, volunteering for extra projects, anything to keep her mind off the fiasco. Sometimes I'd peek into her room at night and see her sitting in silence, shoulders trembling, tears streaming down her face. As her mother, it cut me deep to see her in pain, but I also recognized she was forging a new kind of strength, the ability to confront cruelty and walk away, head held high. The final blow from the Whites came when they posted slanderous messages online, painting Nicole as a manipulative woman who lured Zach in, only to discard him once she'd gotten what she wanted. They blurred their own faces in pictures, but left Nicole's face clear. The insinuations were vile, yet, ironically, they only succeeded in damaging Zach's own reputation further. People who knew Nicole jumped to defend her, exposing how she'd bankrolled most of their relationship. Highland & Co. even issued a formal warning against defamation on her behalf. That was enough to scare them offline. At that point, the Whites realized they'd lost all leverage. They had no claim to her life, her assets, or her future. Amid the ashes of that toxic chapter, Nicole found an unexpected sense of freedom. No more sly remarks about her finances. No more phone calls from Zach's parents breathing down her neck about wedding plans or house chores. It was as though she'd shed a heavy coat of guilt and worry that had weighed her down for months. Richard and I hoped she could finally move on, especially since she still had that beautiful villa in the suburbs. Our gift, waiting to become the home she genuinely deserved. Yet, Nicole had no desire to move in right away. The place felt tainted by the Whites' intrusion, like the echo of their voices still lingered in every room. She asked Richard to rent it out for a while, wanting no direct contact with those memories. We understood. Healing doesn't follow a straight path. It's full of stops, starts, and unexpected turns. That healing process became clearer when Nicole was chosen by Highland and Cody to attend a high-profile business conference. They wanted her to present some of the firm's latest strategies, focusing on market expansions across several states. She'd never done a presentation of that scale before, and I could sense her excitement. She poured herself into the task, working long hours, practicing her speech in front of her bathroom mirror. Sometimes I'd hear her rehearsing after midnight, voice echoing with confidence. It was a welcome change from the heartbreak that had paralyzed her for so many weeks. Watching her find renewed purpose made me believe better days were indeed on the horizon. When the big day arrived, Nicole took the stage like she was born for it. She wore a crisp, tailored blazer, no excess flair, just an assured professional look that commanded respect. Her voice was steady as she explained complex market data, weaving in anecdotes that even non-specialists could grasp. By the time she finished, the crowd of executives and entrepreneurs burst into applause. In that sea of impressed faces, one person stood out, a man slightly older than Nicole, with a thoughtful expression and keen eyes. Later, Nicole learned he was Jason Taylor, a co-founder of a prominent venture capital firm based in San Francisco. Approachable yet clearly driven, Jason approached her after the panel to compliment her clarity and confidence. Their initial conversation was brief, mostly about business, but something in the air felt different from the usual networking chatter. Nicole returned from the conference with a new stack of business cards, fresh leads for Highland & Co., and a face that glowed with a quiet triumph. She hardly mentioned Jason, just that he was interested in discussing potential collaborations. I didn't push for details, suspecting I might embarrass her by prying. But a few days later, a hand-delivered package arrived for her. It contained a leadership book, a personalized note from Jason, and an invitation to reach out whenever she had questions about venture capital. Nicole read the note, a small smile forming on her lips. She looked at me, eyebrows raised as though to say, "Is this real?" For a while, their connection stayed on the professional side. Occasional phone calls turned into meeting for coffee. Coffee turned into lunch, and lunch turned into dinner. Each time, Nicole came home wearing a thoughtful grin, as if she'd discovered a fascinating puzzle in Jason's conversation. When I finally met Jason, he proved to be a stark contrast to Zach in every possible way: polite but not subservient, confident without the slightest hint of arrogance. He seemed genuinely curious about Nicole's ideas and ambitions, rather than seeing her as an accessory to his life. He also had his own set of goals, but he respected Nicole's independence. Over time, that mutual respect fanned into something deeper: affection. Story break. Are you still here following Nicole's journey? If you're rooting for her to find genuine love after all this chaos, drop a 1. If you think there's more trouble brewing, drop a 2. I'd love to see where you stand. Their bond solidified one evening when Jason introduced Nicole to his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, at a casual family dinner in their San Francisco home. The Taylors welcomed her warmly, never once prying into her past relationships or finances. Jason's mother served her homemade dessert, exclaiming how thrilled she was to see Jason bring someone he admired so openly. Contrast this with how the Whites had reacted to Nicole's presence: an immediate, suspicious interrogation. The difference was staggering. Nicole found herself at a table where people genuinely listened and shared. There was no mention of obligation or sacrifice. Instead, they just seemed happy to meet a woman who impressed their son, not because she had something to offer them, but because of who she was. Nicole didn't rush into calling it love. She'd been burned before, and old wounds leave their mark. But she allowed herself a guarded optimism. Step by step, she opened up about her life, her career, even her heartbreak. Jason, for his part, revealed how he'd navigated business challenges, times he'd made mistakes, and how his parents taught him humility despite their own successes. Something in his authenticity resonated with her. It was a slow, deliberate process, a far cry from the whirlwind romance she'd had with Zach. This time, she wasn't patching over red flags. She was building trust on a firm foundation. Seeing Nicole flourish professionally and personally reminded me that sometimes the darkest storms clear the path for a brighter dawn. Had it not been for the heartbreak with Zach, maybe Nicole wouldn't have embraced this new sense of self-worth. She realized that she deserved better, someone who'd walk alongside her rather than drain her. And in forging that realization, she found the courage to stand tall, whether or not someone else was by her side. She was, as Richard often said, becoming the person she was always meant to be. Richard and I never doubted Nicole's resilience, but even we were taken aback by her transformation. She threw herself into philanthropic initiatives at Highland & Co., leading charitable projects in underfunded communities. She spearheaded volunteer groups to teach financial literacy to young adults, something she felt especially passionate about, given how manipulative money dynamics had harmed her own relationship. Her colleagues noticed the change, too. "Nicole, you're glowing," they'd say, or, "It's like you woke up and decided to conquer the world." And in a sense, that was exactly what happened. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, taking the heartbreak and turning it into fuel. Meanwhile, I'd catch glimpses of Jason's subtle influence on her life. He'd swing by her office with lunch or whisk her away for a weekend hike up in the Berkshires, encouraging her to unplug from the corporate grind. They both shared a fascination with real estate, though Jason's interest stemmed from an investor's perspective, while Nicole had originally fallen in love with design through her father's projects. They found common ground in imagining how to revitalize rundown properties and overlooked neighborhoods. I'd hear them brainstorming, excitedly sketching out ideas on napkins. Each conversation revealed their synergy, a sense of partnership I'd never seen in Nicole's previous relationship. Still, old ghosts sometimes linger. Occasionally, Nicole would tense up if someone brought up engagements or wedding talk. She was in no rush to slip a ring on her finger, and Jason, respectful as always, never pushed the subject. When you're ready, he told her simply, we'll talk about it. Until then, I'm just happy building what we have. Richard and I couldn't help but grin at each other. This was a man who understood patience, humility, and love in equal measure. But as Nicole's world brightened, Zach's seemed to descend into chaos. We started hearing rumors that he'd lost his job after Highland & Co. publicly called him out for causing disturbances in their lobby. His father's short temper got him in trouble at multiple workplaces. Mrs. White's brazen attitude had burned countless bridges. They drifted from place to place, eventually leaving Boston altogether when no one would hire Zach. For a time, it seemed they might fade from our lives entirely. Yet, fate isn't always so kind. One evening, about 6 months after Nicole's break with Zach, I answered a call on my cell phone, a number I didn't recognize. A hesitant male voice on the other end said, "Is this Mrs. Merritt?" I froze, immediately recognizing Zach's subdued tone. My first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity gripped me. Why was he calling? Did he want money? Did he want to stir up fresh trouble? Clearing my throat, I asked curtly, "What do you want?" Zach's words came in a strained rush. He'd moved somewhere in the Midwest with his parents, but they were in dire financial straits. He sounded desperate, as if the fire in his belly had gone out. The once arrogant man was now reduced to half-broken pleas, weaving stories of family illness, debts, and regrets. I could almost smell the desperation through the phone. I didn't buy a word of it. Part of me thought, how dare he ask for anything after everything he put Nicole through? But he surprised me by not asking for money. Instead, he mumbled, "I wanted to apologize." My heart lurched. An apology from Zach White was about as likely as snowfall in July. But there it was. He mumbled about how he'd listened to his parents, how he was never man enough to stand up for Nicole, how regret consumed him like a fever he couldn't shake. His voice trembled as if he was on the edge of tears. Was it an act? Possibly, but it felt raw. A part of me softened, remembering how Nicole once loved him. Still, I kept my guard up. "Why now?" I asked quietly. Zach let out a shaky sigh. "Because I have nothing left," he said. "Everything's gone. And when I look back, all I can think is how kind Nicole was. I know she'll never forgive me, but I can't live with myself without trying to say I'm sorry." Silence loomed. I didn't offer him comfort or condemnation. Instead, I said, "I'll pass the message along, but don't expect anything from her." And I ended the call. Another pause here. If you believe in second chances for people like Zach, press 1. If you think once trust is broken, it's best to move on for good, press 2. Your perspective matters, and I'm curious. When I told Nicole about the call, she showed no visible reaction. She simply nodded and asked, "Are they in real trouble?" I relayed the gist, but neither she nor I could be sure if it was genuine or yet another ploy for sympathy. She thanked me for telling her. Then, with a sigh, she declared, "I won't call him back. I can't revisit the past, Mom. I'm trying to live fully in the present now." And that was it. The final page turned on a story that had once threatened to derail her entire life. Around that time, Highland and Coney invited Nicole to help establish a new branch in another city, which meant she would gain more executive responsibilities and a significant pay bump. She accepted with enthusiasm. The move promised a fresh environment, away from any lingering shadow of the whites. It also meant she'd be traveling more, a new pace of life that both excited and daunted her. But every time she felt overwhelmed, I reminded her she'd already survived a far heavier storm. Jason, meanwhile, was in a season of his own expansion. His venture capital firm had secured a deal that could catapult them to another level. When Nicole told him about her transfer, he didn't guilt her or ask her to stay. Instead, he said, "Your success is yours alone. I'd never stand in its way. We can make distance work if we both commit." That single line revealed everything we needed to know about him: supportive, secure, and unafraid of shared challenges. Nicole's eyes misted with gratitude at his reaction, a stark contrast to Zach's old pattern of manipulation. And so it went. Nicole relocated temporarily. She settled into a sleek apartment near the new Highland and Kodlu office, focusing on the branch's grand opening. In her rare free weekends, she either flew back to see us or made time to meet Jason halfway, sometimes in quaint small towns with cozy bed and breakfasts where they could steal a few days of peace. Their relationship matured quietly, with no forced leaps. They each had demanding careers, yes, but they also had mutual respect and trust. It was adult love at its finest. Watching Nicole's blossoming career and healthy, uplifting romance warmed my heart. Though that old villa in Boston sat largely unoccupied during this transitional period, Richard was in no hurry to rent it out again. "I'll hold it for Nicole," he said. "When she's ready to plant roots, I want her to have that space." His devotion to our daughter's comfort was unwavering, even after all the drama that had taken place. The property itself felt purified, as though the negativity left with the whites. We occasionally visited to check on maintenance. Each time we stepped inside, I imagined a future where Nicole might decide to redecorate it from scratch, maybe start a family of her own. The place still had that fresh paint smell, a promise of new beginnings. Meanwhile, we heard next to nothing from Zach's circle. Rumor had it they'd run out of people to exploit in Boston, so they drifted from job to job out in the Midwest. One distant relative of the Whites wrote me on Facebook, apologizing for her family's intrusion and explaining that the Whites had tried a similar tactic with some cousins, trying to move in, dictating how the house should be used. It backfired, leading to more estrangements. Frankly, it amazed me how persistent greed can be, even when it repeatedly leads to ruin. Then came the day that truly marked a turning point for Nicole, and for all of us. She had been in the new branch for about 8 months when she arrived at a major industry awards ceremony. This time, she wasn't just presenting, she was being honored. Highland and Cody recognized her outstanding leadership and dedication to ethical business practices. That evening, I saw pictures of her online, wearing a deep emerald gown that radiated sophistication. Richard and I, though we couldn't attend in person, received proud updates from her colleagues. After the ceremony, Jason took Nicole out for a celebratory dinner at a historic inn. Candlelight flickered across their table. They reminisced about her humble beginning at the old office in Boston, the challenges she faced, and how she overcame them. That's when Jason pulled out a small box and placed it gently in front of her. Inside was a ring, not flashy or enormous, but elegantly crafted. He admitted he'd been carrying it for a month, waiting for the perfect moment, one that belonged entirely to Nicole's achievements, not overshadowed by anyone else's expectations. She said yes, a quiet, confident yes. No tears of shock, no dramatic outbursts, just a calm acceptance that this was right. This was love built on respect. She told us the news the next day, sounding more composed than I'd ever heard her. "Mom," she said, "Dad, I'm engaged to a man who cherishes me. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm losing myself. I feel whole. Brief moment. If you're celebrating with Nicole, comment 1 for a heartfelt congratulations. If you're still cautious and want to see how everything unfolds, press 2. I'd love to sense your reaction. Eat. When Nicole came home the following weekend, we all had dinner together, just the 4 of us me, Richard, her, and Jason. Over grilled salmon and fresh salad, laughter came easily. Jason talked about his firm's projects. Nicole shared stories from her new branch, and Richard chimed in with updates on our family business. At one point, the conversation turned to wedding details. We don't want anything huge, Nicole said, just a close gathering of friends and family, a place where we can look everyone in the eye and genuinely share our joy. No one brought up the fiasco with the Whites. We didn't need to. It felt like that entire saga belonged to a different lifetime. Despite Nicole's newfound happiness, some memories still lurked like shadowy corners in a bright room. She confessed to me one evening that she sometimes dreamed of Zach's family barging into her life, demanding the wedding or the house or something else. In these nightmares, they'd break down the front door and try to reclaim her future. Each time, she'd wake up heart pounding. It's silly, she said, forcing a laugh. They're gone. They can't possibly come back. But trauma isn't always logical. It leaves a mark that flares up under stress. I reassured her, those dreams might be your mind's way of reminding you how far you've come. Soon after her engagement, Nicole decided to revisit the Boston villa she'd once dreaded stepping into. She wanted to see if it could become a real home for her and Jason after the wedding. On a crisp Saturday morning, Jason, Nicole, and I drove out to the suburban neighborhood, taking in the neat gardens and quiet streets. The last time I'd been there, my heart was pounding with anger at the Whites. Now I approached it with hopeful anticipation. The door opened to a wash of morning light revealing immaculate floors, spacious rooms, and tasteful furniture. Exactly as Richard had left it, the echoes of hateful words and frantic scuffling felt a world away. Nicole walked from room to room, remembering the day we first showed it to her. Her eyes glistened with something I can only describe as relief, as though she was exorcising the ghosts. Jason studied the layout, noting potential spots for an at-home office and a cozy reading nook. He even joked about turning one of the spare rooms into a mini gym so they could work out without leaving home. Nicole shot him a playful grin. I thought you'd want a gaming room. He laughed. I can do both, can I? It was beautiful to see them stand on that same balcony where Zach's mother once complained about the view. This time, no one was moaning about gates or privacy fences. Instead, they marveled at the well-kept lawns and the gentle curve of the nearby lake, how the morning sun reflected off the water in a kaleidoscope of colors. That's when Nicole breathed in deeply and said, I can see our future here. I can see us. Richard joined us soon after, and we spent the afternoon discussing home improvements. No major renovation was needed, just some personal touches, new curtains, fresh paint in a few rooms, updated appliances. The day felt like a reclaiming, a final statement that this house was Nicole's to share with whomever she chose. And maybe, after the wedding, they'd officially settle in, or maybe they'd keep it as a second home for weekend escapes while still living in the city. Whatever choice she made, it would be hers, no one else's. Mid-story check. Are you envisioning the villa with them? If you wish you could see the sunrise from that balcony, drop a 1. Or if you're more interested in how they'll design the rooms, drop a 2. Thanks for being part of this journey. In the middle of this hopeful day, the doorbell rang. It was unexpected, and for a split second, I felt a chill, half expecting a white family ambush. But it was a realtor from a nearby agency. She'd noticed someone was in the house and thought the property might be back on the market. We politely told her we weren't selling, but thanked her for her interest. After she left, We shared a good laugh, imagining if that had been the Whites again. This time, we knew how to stand our ground, no question about it. Evening settled in, and we toasted with sparkling cider to celebrate new beginnings in that villa. Jason and Nicole stood side by side, soaking in the warm glow of the overhead lights and the comforting hum of the air conditioner. She turned to him and whispered just loud enough for me and Richard to hear, "Thank you for never making me question my worth." Jason squeezed her hand in response, no elaborate speeches needed. Before we locked up, Nicole found a small scratch mark on the wooden banister, most likely from the day Mr. White scuffed it while hurrying through the house. She traced it with her fingertip, expression pensive. "We could sand this away, and it looked brand new," Richard offered. Nicole shook her head. "Let's leave it. It can remind me that even something beautiful can carry scars, and that's okay." It was a poignant moment, capturing the essence of how she'd chosen to integrate her past without letting it define her future. We departed that night knowing the house now stood as a monument to her resilience, no longer a battleground for someone else's greed. The wedding planning was surprisingly smooth, largely because Nicole kept it simple and Jason's family was refreshingly cooperative. She invited only a handful of close friends, a few cousins, and some colleagues who had become like a second family at Highland & Co. Meanwhile, the Taylors brought in a modest guest list of relatives from different parts of California. Richard and I used the occasion to reconnect with old friends, many of whom still remembered Nicole as the bright, determined college grad who used to talk about one day designing houses. No fuss about elaborate venues or multiple ceremonies, just a single day at a scenic garden, full of fresh flowers, heartfelt vows, and genuine unity. People often say the wedding day belongs to the couple, but as a mother, I also felt it was a day of closure and renewal for us as a family. Richard took Nicole's arm in his, ready to walk her down the aisle. She wore a simple, elegant gown that flowed around her like a gentle cloud, and her face glowed with calm joy. I was sure I'd cry, but in that moment I only felt a warm surge of pride. Pride that she'd chosen a love that uplifted her rather than overshadowed her. A love that didn't demand she shrink herself to fit someone else's insecurities. The ceremony was held under a floral archway, the late afternoon sun casting long, soft rays across the garden. Jason stood there, eyes shining, dressed in a tailored navy suit. When Nicole stepped forward with Richard by her side, it was as though the world paused to watch her transformation from heartbreak survivor to glowing bride. Their vows were short but deeply personal, referencing private jokes, shared aspirations, and the mutual promise to always see each other as individuals first. When they exchanged rings, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. Even I, who thought I'd hold it together, found a tear sliding down my cheek. Afterward, in the gentle chaos of congratulations and group photos, I noticed Nicole slip away briefly, heading toward a quiet corner of the garden. Concerned, I followed. I found her gazing at a small koi pond, fiddling with the hem of her wedding dress. When she turned to me, her eyes were brimming with emotion. "Mom," she said, voice trembling slightly, "I'm so happy. But there's a part of me that still aches for the girl who thought she had to accept less than this." She wasn't speaking of regret, but of a deep acknowledgement of her own past naivete. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "That girl is gone, Nicole. You're here now, in this moment, and that's all that matters. You earned this happiness." She nodded, exhaling as though she was letting the last ghosts fade. Then she smiled, truly smiled, and asked me to go back and celebrate with everyone. That's exactly what we did. Richard, Jason, the Taylors, and I formed a small circle around her, a ring of familial support. The night sparkled with music and laughter, the reception culminating in heartfelt toasts. Jason's father gave a particularly touching speech about how proud he was of his son for finding a partner so passionate and thoughtful, while Nicole's new mother in law gave Nicole a gentle hug that spoke volumes without a word. Quick check. If this wedding scene brought you a sense of peace or joy, drop a 1. If you're still curious about whether more drama could pop up, drop a 2. I'm all ears. We never once mentioned the Whites by name. Yet, I couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast. If Nicole had married Zach, her wedding day might have been overshadowed by demands, arguments, or insults. Here, she was enveloped by love and respect. By the end of the evening, as the newlyweds prepared to depart for their honeymoon, a modest yet romantic trip to the Napa Valley, Nicole tossed her bouquet, said a tearful goodbye, and soared into a future that finally felt like hers. The entire ride home, Richard and I held hands, content in the knowledge that our daughter had broken free from the chains of an exploitative relationship and found real happiness in its place. In the months that followed, Nicole and Jason settled into a comfortable rhythm of married life. They chose to keep the suburban villa as a weekend home and maintain a more convenient condo in the city, given their jobs. Richard couldn't have been happier. He saw them filling that villa with life and memories over the years to come, hosting weekend barbecues, maybe bringing grandchildren around one day. As for Nicole, she finally felt ready to reshape the house to her liking. She hired interior designers to help her pick out fresh color palettes, modern fixtures, and high-quality furnishings. Every choice she made reflected her and Jason's mutual tastes, a far cry from the chaotic demands the Whites once tried to impose. One Saturday, while checking paint samples in the living room, Nicole received an unexpected text from an unknown number. It read, "Nicole, I know we're not on speaking terms, but I want you to know I'm genuinely sorry for everything I put you through. I heard you got married. Congratulations. You deserve better than me." It was signed simply Zach. Nicole stared at the message, her expression unreadable. She showed it to Jason, who gently asked, "How do you feel about it?" Without missing a beat, Nicole deleted the text and said, "I have nothing left to say to him." That was her closure. She didn't need to respond. She'd moved on, and the past had no hold over her anymore. Life brimmed with small, beautiful moments. Nicole discovering a new coffee spot near the city office, Jason surprising her with tickets to a local jazz concert, or the pair of them chatting excitedly about each other's next business ventures. They often joked that they had to schedule official unplug hours just to enjoy each other's company without the intrusion of emails or phone calls. Their partnership, built on mutual respect and unwavering trust, was thriving. Meanwhile, Richard and I watched from the sidelines, cheering them on like proud supporters. We'd gather for Sunday lunches or holiday get-togethers, each occasion reinforcing how well-suited they were. But the moment we truly recognized Nicole's healing was when she finally revisited the story of her past in a candid conversation. It happened during a relaxed barbecue in the villa's backyard, the air fragrant with grilled vegetables and marinated chicken. Jason and Nicole were reminiscing with friends about bizarre dating anecdotes, and someone asked Nicole how she'd managed to dodge the worst relationship pitfalls. She took a breath, glanced at Jason, and then, without bitterness, shared a condensed version of her history with Zach. She explained how she once believed that love meant sacrificing her own needs and opinions, how she let a man's family walk all over her, and how it took a dramatic showdown to finally break free. Her tone was factual, not resentful. As she spoke, Jason placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Their friends listened intently, some wide-eyed with disbelief that anyone could treat her so poorly. After she finished, one friend asked, "Looking back, what was the turning point?" Nicole replied, "Realizing I was allowed to say no, and that if someone truly loved me, they wouldn't make me feel guilty or lesser for drawing boundaries." To see her articulate that so clearly, with such emotional maturity, made me feel like the last splinter from that old wound had been removed. No more lingering shame or anger, just lessons learned. Interlude. If you admire Nicole's strength and growth, comment 1. If you feel there's another layer to this story that we haven't seen yet, comment 2. Let me know what you think. The barbecue continued well into the evening, the sky streaked with pink and orange hues. Laughter mingled with the sizzle of the grill, and conversation flowed freely. I found myself seated next to Nicole on a cozy outdoor sofa, and for a moment, we watched Jason demonstrate a comedic dance move for everyone's amusement. She leaned in, her voice quiet, and said, "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for pushing me to stand up for myself, for letting me find my own way, and for never saying I told you so." I smiled and brushed back a stray hair from her forehead. "All we want is for you to be happy." It occurred to me how drastically our lives had changed in such a short span of time. We went from fending off opportunists at our doorstep to celebrating love in a garden brimming with friends. Sometimes the storms we weather help us discern true blessings when the sun shines again. I believe that wholeheartedly now. The old heartbreak no longer cast a long shadow. Instead, it was a distant cautionary tale reminding us how easily people can twist love into leverage and how vital it is to demand respect in every relationship. I'm Nicole, and once I truly believed that love could overcome everything. When I first met Zach, he seemed quiet, reserved, a contrast to the flashy types I'd dated before. I mistook his hush for depth and his stinginess for simple frugality. Friends warned me that he was a taker, not a giver, but I dismissed their concerns as unfair judgments. Over time, I realized his so-called practicality was just selfishness dressed in more respectable clothes. Every holiday, he'd conveniently forget my gifts or insist the simplest gesture was too expensive. Yet, I showered him with generosity, telling myself it was noble to expect nothing in return. The first time I met his mother, she barely greeted me before demanding to know if I could cook. When I replied that I was learning, she sneered that city girls never belonged in a real kitchen. I should have seen it as a red flag, but I told myself to endure. If only I tried harder, surely I could earn her acceptance, right? What a naive fantasy. As the weeks rolled on, I watched them treat me like a meal ticket, someone whose affection could be measured in dollars and cents. When my parents offered us a villa, I assumed the Whites would be grateful or at least polite. Instead, they barged in claiming the master bedroom and assigning my wifely duties. They saw me not as a partner for Zach, but as an accessory, an ATM, and a maid all rolled into one. Zach stood aside, mumbling that I should appease his parents. Just this once. But once became every time. My boundaries kept shrinking until there was nowhere left for me. I finally snapped when his father casually decided to move his brother's entire family into my villa. I glimpsed a future of endless servitude and realized I deserved better. Breaking the engagement felt like pulling my heart out, but the heartbreak I feared was nothing compared to the agony I would have faced marrying into that greed. I learned that real love doesn't require self-erasure. Real love stands beside you rather than overshadowing you. Walking away from Zach was the bravest thing I'd ever done, and it set me on a path to discover who I really was, a woman who refused to be trampled. That reflection of Nicole's past, raw, honest, and direct, became a personal manifesto for everyone who heard it. It reminded me that trauma isn't always about the magnitude of a single event, but the countless small instances that whittle down our self-esteem. In Nicole's case, it took a dramatic collision between two families to finally awaken her to the reality of what she'd been tolerating for far too long. But she rose from the rubble stronger, more self-aware, and eventually open to genuine love when it found her. In the peaceful months that followed, everything fell into a tranquil rhythm. Nicole and Jason hosted dinners at the villa, forging new memories that replaced every sour moment left behind by the Whites. Her work at Highland and Company soared, culminating in a partnership opportunity she accepted wholeheartedly. Jason's venture capital projects thrived, and they embarked on philanthropic collaborations together, eager to leave a positive mark on underserved communities. Even Richard and I found ourselves with more free time to travel now that we no longer worried about Nicole's well being. We took short trips to the coast, explored quiet fishing villages, and returned with pictures to show Nicole. She'd tease us, saying we were finally living like retirees, to which Richard proudly declared, "We've earned it." Occasionally, Nicole would mention the possibility of starting a family. "We're not in a hurry," she'd say, "but it's on our minds." Whether or not grandchildren appear soon, we're content knowing our daughter stands on solid ground, shielded by her own strength and the unwavering kindness of the man who stands beside her. As for Zach and his family, they remain ghosts of a lesson learned. Nicole never reached out again, and no further calls disturbed our peace. Sometimes we hear distant rumors that they continue drifting, their sense of entitlement festering wherever they land, but it's no longer our concern. They can't trespass on our happiness or cast shadows on Nicole's life. The story doesn't end here, of course. Life seldom closes its pages neatly. But if there's one takeaway, it's that no amount of love or pity should blind a person to their own worth. Nicole discovered that the hard way, but she did discover it. And in the wake of heartbreak, she met a future that proved how healthy love can feel: unforced, nourishing, like a home you choose rather than one you're coerced into. Standing by, Richard and I couldn't be prouder. Final engagement prompt. If you've journeyed with us to the end and feel inspired or relieved, comment 1. If you think we should have done anything differently, comment 2. Thanks for sharing in our family story, wherever you may be. When I reflect on the day I almost watched Richard knock out that man in the villa, a day meant to be a joyous unveiling of a wedding gift, I see it now as the spark that ignited Nicole's ultimate awakening. In a single punch, the illusions about Zach and his family shattered, and sometimes a moment of raw confrontation paves the way for a lifetime of honest serenity. Our daughter took the gift we offered, the villa, and reclaimed it from the hands of greed. She took her dreams and molded them into a reality that not even heartbreak could undermine. Most importantly, she learned the power of one simple sentence that forever sent her greedy in-laws running. "Take your parents and get out. This house is not yours." No further intrusions, no more illusions. Just a new era defined by Nicole's resilience, her ability to love fully without sacrificing her self-respect. And that, as a mother, is all I ever wanted: to see my daughter standing in her own light, unafraid of the shadows left behind. Quick pause here, everyone. This story is heating up faster than ever. Nicole's nightmare with her greedy in-laws seems endless, but she hasn't even delivered the knockout blow yet. Trust me, what she says next is going to leave you cheering. If you're enjoying the story so far, go ahead and drop a comment below. Type 1 if you think Nicole's parents did the right thing stepping in, or 2 if you believe Nicole should have handled things entirely on her own. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories just like this one. Now, let's get back to the drama and find out what happens next.